Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending today's virtual session on the City of London's 2026 annual budget update. My name is Jason Davies. I'm going to be moderating today's session. I'm with the city, working in the Financial and Planning Policy Office. I'm joined online today by Kyle Murray, who is our Director of Financial Planning and Business Support, who's going to be our main presenter today, as well as our colleague Rick Lehman, who is also here to help provide support and answer any questions that might come up. So before we get started, we want to let everyone know that we are recording today, and a copy of this session is going to be added to the city's budget web page on the Get Involved site at getinvolved.london.ca. So today, Kyle is going to walk us through a presentation that's going to be shared on screen for the entirety. So please note that for the entire presentation and session, all participants will remain muted and video cameras will be turned off. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the Zoom Q&A box at any point during the session. So this icon can be located at the bottom of the screen and is marked with the words Q&A. To ensure that we keep communication streamlined and we don't miss anyone's questions, we've disabled the chat function for the webinar. So please use the Q&A button, and we encourage you to submit questions at any time. And we're going to be answering them at the end of today's session in the dedicated Q&A portion. At the end of the session, we're also going to provide our office's contact information. So if you think of other questions later that you haven't come up with during the session today, you can always reach out and we'll be happy to help provide some answers. So before we start the session, we'd like to begin with the land acknowledgement. So the City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Attawandaron. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who call this territory home. The City of London is currently home to many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we're honored to work and live in this territory. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this session over to Kyle to begin our presentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that introduction. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in today for our discussion about the city's 2026 budget update. Really appreciate your engagement and interest in the city's budget process, and particularly taking the time out of your day or out of your lunch hour to join us here today. I will walk through a number of slides that we have prepared. And as Jason mentioned, we'll have an opportunity at the end to address any questions that you might have. So the 2026 budget update was released back on October the 27th, and the document is now available online on our website at london.ca/budget. It's also available on our public engagement page at getinvolved.london.ca/budget. So this is what it looks like as shown here on screen. Today we'll walk you through a refresher on the annual budget update process and where it fits in the city's overall four-year multi-year budget cycle. I'll provide a bit of a recap on where we were coming out of the 2025 budget update process last year and heading into this year's budget process. And then I'll walk you through the various budget decision points or budget business cases that Council will be working through this year. And then we'll conclude with a few key dates in the process, as well as how you can get involved and provide your feedback on the budget as well. So the 2026 budget update reflects the second annual update to the 2024 to 2027 multi-year budget. That multi-year budget, of course, for those who have been following along, was deemed adopted back on March 1st, 2024. This year's budget update is the final budget update of this term of council. And the annual budget update is really a critical process in the multi-year budget cycle because it gives us the opportunity as we work through the multi-year budget term to make strategic adjustments or course corrections that we might need to as we work through the 4 years of the cycle. An annual budget update is primarily focused on adjustments that are required to address material changes that maybe have come up since the adoption of the multi-year budget. I think it's important to note that it is not a full redo of the budget. It is really focused on those things that need to be changed relative to what was approved in the multi-year budget. So the decision points in an annual budget update are generally in the form of business cases. And those business cases typically fall into the three categories that you see listed on this slide here. So these categories are the same for the property tax budget as well as the water and wastewater budgets. When we refer to our municipal budget, oftentimes the property tax budget gets the most attention, but in fact, we do have three budgets: the property tax budget, the water, and the wastewater budget. So the categorization of business cases is the same for all three budgets. You will also see as well that business cases are further categorized between those that are included in the mayor's proposed budget, as well as other business cases that have been put forward for council's consideration and discussion. So I'll get into that a little bit further and in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but you will see that categorization as well. So before we get into the details of this year's budget update, let's recap where we were coming out of last year's budget process. So this graph that you see here illustrates the tax levy increases that were anticipated based on the adopted multi-year budget. So that is the blue dotted line that you see on this graph, as well as the adjusted increases based on last year's 2025 budget updates. So those are the solid, that's the solid purple line that you see on this slide. So 8.7% was the tax levy increase for 2024. And 8.7% was anticipated for 2025, although this was adjusted down to 7.3% through last year's 2025 budget update. And then coming into this year, then the projected tax levy increases were 6.4% for 2026 and 6.7% for 2027. Every year, we also like to include a little bit of context in our presentation about where we stand relative to our municipal peers, and specifically other large Ontario municipalities. And to do that, we look at the annual BMA municipal study, which is completed by an independent third party, and they allow us to make comparisons of how London stacks up versus other Ontario municipalities. And we specifically look at those municipalities with populations greater than 100,000 people. So you see those municipalities listed here on this screen. And I think before I get into the details here, it's important to note that this reflects 2024 data. We do not yet have 2025 information available. So this is based on 2024. So the first comparison that we show, and it's on this slide, is average residential taxes. So London is the green bar you see here at $3,806 is the average residential taxes in London. And that compares to the average of $5,043. That's the red bar. And a median amongst these municipalities of $4,925 per year. That is the orange bar that you see on this slide. The next comparison that we look at is average residential property taxes as a percentage of household income. London, again, is the green bar that you see at 3.7%. Both the average and the median in this case both fall at 4% as well. So if we look to commercial property taxes, London once again is the green bar. This is on a per square foot basis of commercial space. London comes in at $3.17 per square foot of property taxes. If you look at the average in red, that is $3.84 per square foot, and the median as well is $3.84 per square foot. The final comparison that we're showing is industrial property taxes. London is again in green at $1.51, again on a per square foot basis. The average again in red is $2.14, and the median comes in at $2.02 per square foot. So just a little bit of context in terms of how London stacks up relative to other large urban centers across the province. So now let's get into the 2026 budget update. And before we get into the nitty-gritty details of the 2026 budget business cases, I think some context is important to frame what you'll be seeing in terms of those business cases. So earlier this year, Mayor Josh Morgan issued a mayoral direction that directed civic administration as well as the city's agencies, boards, and commissions to bring forward options for consideration that, if adopted, would reduce the 2026 tax levy increase to below 5%. So recall from a few slides ago, the projected increase for this year was 6.4%. The mayor issued direction to bring that down below 5%. So subsequent to that direction, civic administration then brought forward a report to the budget committee back in May, and that included a number of options for consideration for potential reductions that council could consider. Now, council decided that they did not want to entertain a few of those options, so those options were taken off the list. However, the remaining items that were put forward for potential reductions, those have been brought forward now as business cases through the 2026 budget update. And there are also a handful of other business cases that have been brought forward, both potential increases as well as potential decreases to the budget that have been brought forward from civic service areas as well as agencies, boards, and commissions. Now, as I alluded to earlier, budget business cases are further categorized as those that are included in the mayor's tabled budget for council's consideration, as well as other business cases that are not included in the mayor's budget, but are presented for council's consideration and discussion. So really, these are presented in order to facilitate a fulsome discussion as well as public engagement on all of the various decision points. And so they have been put forward so that that full conversation can happen prior to budget deliberations. So there are 21 budget business cases that you'll find in the mayor's tabled budget. 3 of those business cases pertain to tax levy increases. 14 of them relate to tax levy reductions, and 4 of them have no tax levy impact associated with them. There are 4 other business cases that have been put forward for council's consideration but are not included in the mayor's budget. All 4 of those business cases are potential tax levy reductions. So I'll take you now through the various budget business cases, and we'll start with the property tax supported budget to begin with. So the first business case is business case P1. This is an increase to the budget for London Middlesex community housing, and this is intended to offset operating budget pressures that they are experiencing. This business case has been brought forward in order to preserve the operation of the city's public housing stock. And it's important to note that the amounts that you see for this business case reflected on this slide, they reflect the city share. A portion of the request, though, will be funded as well by the County of Middlesex in addition. The next 2 business cases are to assist the Middlesex London Health Unit address budget pressures that they are facing in 2026. Business case P2 requests support from the city to retire an outstanding health unit loan, which would then free up $241,000 of funding that would otherwise go to repaying that loan, that could instead be used for programs and services that the health unit delivers. The second business case that pertains to the health unit is business case P3. This is a request for additional one-time support for 2026. This will allow the health unit some more time to receive clarity going forward on the province's public health funding formula, and also to continue advocating with the province to ensure that sufficient funding is provided to support health units across the province. Business case P4 is related to the Middlesex County Connect Intercommunity Transit Service, and specifically London's contribution to that initiative. Now, this initiative is intended to be split equally between the 5 municipalities in this region who are participating in the initiative, those being Middlesex County, Oxford County, Lambton County, as well as the cities of St. Thomas and London. What is proposed is an equal split, 5 ways between those municipalities. London's contribution to this initiative is expected to be $423,000 over 5 years. And the proposal is that this would be funded from the city's Economic Development Reserve Fund, which in turn then would mean no impact on the tax levy for this particular business case. Business case P5 is another case that has no impact on the property tax levy. This business case simply adjusts the timing of several budgeted capital projects in the transportation service area. There are some additional budget requests as part of this business case as well, but they have been dealt with through various one-time funding sources, and thus there is no impact on the tax levy as a result of this business case. Business case P6. So this represents a modest reduction to the city's budget for local road reconstruction, focusing on neighborhood streets. So this is a business case that has been prepared and put forward in response to the mayor's direction to bring forward options for potential budget savings. And if adopted, this business case would mean, approximately 1 less small street or small court being rehabilitated each year. Business case P7 is another capital project timing change business case. This has no tax levy impact as well. This business case adjusts the timing of a budgeted capital project for the organic waste diversion facility. And basically it just pushes it further out into the future. So no tax levy consequences associated with this one. Business case P8 is a reduction to the property tax levy that would see the council pilot project for multi-residential green bin service stopped. So this is another example of a business case that has been put forward in response to the mayoral direction to identify potential budget savings. The provincial requirement is that building owners are responsible for this service, and thus there is the option for the city to save $450,000 per year by ending this pilot program and any further expansion of the program into the future. Business case P9 represents a budget reduction from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. I'll just note that this business case is split between the property tax and the wastewater budgets. This specific business case P9 deals with the property tax supported portion. The other portion is found in business case WWT3. Business case P10 is another business case brought forward in response to the mayoral direction to identify budget savings. It is another reduction case, this time in the amount of $84,000 per year. And this would be achieved by reducing the number of City of London internship opportunities that are offered. Business case P11, again, yet another tax levy reduction case, this time in the amount of approximately $85,000 per year. And what this would mean is a reduction in the scope and pace of implementation of some of the city's information technology programs. So again, a case that has been brought forward in response to the direction to identify potential savings. Likewise, yet another business case here with P12 that has been prepared based on the mayoral direction. This one would reduce the frequency of the city's resident satisfaction survey from every year to once every 2 years. So the next survey would occur in 2026. and then we would achieve or realize savings associated with it in 2027. Business case P13 is another reduction, albeit a more significant reduction. This case removes the previously budgeted contributions that were used to backfill statutory development charge exemptions. So, I know that's probably very technical sounding, but basically, DCs are funds that are paid by developers when they build new residential or commercial or industrial or institutional space. And the previous understanding that the city had was that municipalities were legislatively required to backfill development charge exemptions that were provided for certain types of new builds. However, we've since received clarity from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that we do not need to backfill those DC exemptions from other funding sources, specifically the property tax levy, and therefore we are able to save $6.4 million per year by no longer backfilling exemptions. Business case P14 addresses savings that we've identified in the city's debt servicing program. So debt servicing, again, a technical term, but debt servicing is the money that is set aside in the budget to pay principal and interest on the city's outstanding debt. The debt, of course, that we borrow is used to fund the city's capital projects or certain city capital projects. So this business case first recommends contributing approximately $10 million in 2026 and $6 million in 2027 to our debt substitution reserve fund. That will help us avoid the issuance of some debt in the future and provide future tax savings by not having to then incur those debt servicing costs on that debt. Secondly, the second portion of this business case allocates $18 million to directly reduce the 2027 property tax levy increase, which will provide some immediate savings for taxpayers. Business case P15 is a business case that has no property tax levy impact. It's similar to previous cases that I've talked about where we're just adjusting the timing of some capital projects. In this case, it pertains to the London Public Library and specifically the timing of a couple of new branches. Basically, this is just adjusting the timing to better align with when we expect that those branch projects will actually move forward. Business case P16 also pertains to the London Public Library. This is a return of funding from them, which results in a property tax reduction in 2026. The library's stabilization reserve fund has really reached its target balance. So basically, the library is returning to the city the amount over and above their target balance for their reserve fund and is being put forward as tax levy mitigation in 2026. Business case P17 is quite similar to the previous case in that it pertains to one of the city's agencies, boards, and commissions, identifying an opportunity to return on a one-time basis some funding to the city to reduce the tax levy. In this case, it's the London Police Service, and it has identified $1.5 million from two of their reserve funds that can be used to help offset property tax levy requirements for 2026. Business case 18, P18, represents net savings of $700,000, this time identified by the London Transit Commission. And they have reviewed their operating budget for 2026 and have put forward anticipated savings that they don't believe they require for next year. Business case P19 deals with an update to the city's recreation and sport user fees, which was directed by council back in early June. Basically, increased user fees in this area will result in additional revenue generation, and thus that means less reliance on property tax funding to pay for these services. So this means $760,000 per year of less reliance on the property tax levy. Business case P20 is the business case that has been put forward to address council direction to allocate $16.9 million of the 2024 property tax surplus to be used for tax mitigation in the 2026 budget update. So that $16.9 million has been split evenly between 2026 and 2027. So about $8.4 million and change per year of tax levy savings in 2026 and 2027. Business case 21 is what we refer to as the annual budget right-sizing business case that we bring forward as civic administration. This is part of our regular service review process to ensure that the resources that we have are aligned with, the current service levels and budget requirements for, the various city services that we deliver. So this business case identifies about $20 million of savings opportunities over the next 2 years. So those are the 21 business cases in the 2026 budget update that are included in the mayor's proposed budget. Before we move on to the business cases that are not included in the mayor's budget, I think another important point that I really want to mention at this point, and I think it's something that we hear regularly, but I think it's a misconception that we like to address at every opportunity we can, and that's that the budget process alone does not set the ultimate tax increase that a property owner will pay. We like to use an analogy. If you've joined in the past, in previous years, you'll have heard this analogy before, but basically you can think of setting the budget as, determining the size of the pie we're making. There's another process, though, that we refer to as tax policy, and that process occurs after the budget is adopted, and that determines how that pie will be sliced. Now, there's also the component of education taxes that are set by the province as well, that factors into ultimately what the taxpayer will pay at the end of the day on their tax bill. But just to kind of illustrate how both tax policy and education tax shift the ultimate tax levy increase, you'll recall that the 2025 tax levy increase that was approved through the budget was 7.3%. However, layering on the tax policy decisions that occurred last spring, as well as the impact of education taxes, the average residential tax increase for 2025 was in fact actually 6.6%. So it was a bit lower ultimately than what was approved through the budget. And that's similar to what we saw in 2024 as well. So these impacts are illustrated visually on the graph on the next slide, and you'll see them kind of how they relate to the budget. So what is the kind of collective impact of the 21 business cases that the mayor has included in his proposed budget? Well, again, our starting point here was the blue line. And again, remember that the starting point for this year was 6.4%. And as you can see, the 2026 tax levy increase has been reduced by about 2.8% down to 3.6%. And likewise, the 2027 increase has been reduced by approximately 2% from 6.7% down to 4.7%. I will note, however, that there's still further work to be done on the 2027 budget over the course of the next year. Now, as I talked about on the previous slide, the green line on this graph illustrates the impact of tax policy and education taxes, again, that are determined after the budget is set. So the green line depicts ultimately the final property tax increase that were experienced by individual residential property owners. So just kind of shows how there's a bit of deviation ultimately between what is set through the budget and ultimately what the final tax increase ends up being for the average residential taxpayer. All right, let's move on to the other business cases that were not included in the mayor's budget. Business case P22 if included in the budget, would result in a further reduction of approximately $150,000 per year, which would be achieved by reducing tree planting grants and non-replacement tree planting. Again, another example of a business case that has been put forward for consideration based on the mayor's direction to identify potential budget reductions. Business case P23, again, if adopted, would reduce the tax levy by approximately $200,000 per year by eliminating the funding for the current program that installs streetlights in older neighborhoods where they do not currently exist. Instead, this program would become a 100% property owner cost if those impacted property owners chose to do so. So again, another example of a business case that was put forward based on the mayor's direction. Business case P24 it represents a permanent reduction to the contribution to the city's climate change reserve fund. This would mean savings of $192,000 per year. Again, another business case put forward for consideration in this search for budget reductions. Final property tax business case P25. This represents a savings of $250,000 per year if the city were to stop collecting blue box materials from non-eligible sources. Those non-eligible sources including things like multi-residential buildings, schools, nonprofit, long-term care and retirement homes, for example. It should be noted that this service is no longer required to be provided by municipalities. So there is the ability to stop delivering this service and save $250,000 per year in the course of doing so. Okay, I mentioned earlier that it's not just the property tax budget, but also the water and wastewater budgets as well. So let's move on to the water budget first. There are significantly fewer business cases for the water budget and the wastewater budget. But starting with the water budget, business case W1 is a business case that has no impact on the city's water user rates. This case, similar to some of those in the property tax budget, simply adjusts the timing of several budgeted capital projects. There's also a small additional budget request that has been funded through one-time sources. So there are no rate impacts associated with this business case. However, business case W2 does represent a reduction to the water utility rates. And this is very similar to the business case I talked about before on the property tax budget. This case removes the previously budgeted funding, in this case of $500,000 per year, that was used to backfill statutory development charges exemptions. So this one does result in some notable savings to the water budget. Let's turn to wastewater. Business case WWT1 is one, again, that has no impact on wastewater rates. Similar to the property tax budget and the water budget, we are adjusting the timing of several capital projects here. So no associated rate impacts that go along with this particular business case. Business case WWT2, again, another case that does not have utility rate impacts. This case adjusts the timing of the approved budget for the Greenway Wastewater Treatment Plant Section 1 renewal project. Basically, the intention here is to advance some budget so that we can start detailed design on that project ahead of the construction of those works that is planned for 2029. Business case WWT3 is the utility rate portion, the wastewater rate portion of business case P9 from the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. This one represents some small one-time savings from UTRCA. Business case WWT4, the final business case I'm going to talk about, so bear with me here. This is the reduction on the wastewater side to the wastewater rates, similar to the cases I talked about on the property tax budget and the water budget, pertaining to development charges exemptions. In this case, this removes $3.1 million per year of budgeted funding that was previously used to backfill those exemptions. So overall, the water and wastewater business cases that I've just talked about, they do result in reductions to the approved rates for water and wastewater services for 2026. So for water specifically, the previously forecasted rate increase for water was 2.6%. That has been reduced to 2.2%. And on the wastewater side, the previously anticipated increase was 4.6%. That has been reduced to 2.4%. Okay, we've come to the most important part of the presentation. Let's spend some time talking about the key dates in this year's budget process, as well as how you can get involved and provide your feedback in the budget process as well. So, for those who are familiar with the municipal budget process or have followed along the last couple of years, you will know that new legislation was introduced back in 2022 by the province. We call it Strong Mayor legislation. This legislation was extended to London in 2023, and it continues to apply to our municipal budget process. And it sets out very prescribed timelines in terms of how the budget process has to play out. So you see those timelines and those requirements on this slide. The starting point in the process is for the mayor to propose a budget on or before February 1st. So the mayor has done that by releasing his budget on October the 27th. Once the budget is released, that then opens a 30-day period for council amendments to the proposed budget, followed then by a 10-day period for the mayor to provide potentially written veto of council amendments. If he were to do so, then that opens a 15-day period for council to potentially override the mayor's veto with a 2/3 majority. So a very prescribed process that we have to go through. So we've tried to set the budget timetable with those requirements in mind, but also to ensure that we have the most amount of time possible to engage with the public on the budget, to inform and educate and have as much room for deliberations on the budget as we can. So in terms of the timelines for this year, I think the next important date to highlight is November the 18th. That is the date for the public participation meeting on the budget. That starts at 4 p.m. At Budget Committee. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then after that, we get into budget deliberations. So budget deliberations are scheduled for November the 20th, as well as the 21st, if required as well. Council will then formally approve any amendments that they want to make to the mayor's budget on November the 26th. So that is exactly 30 days after the mayor proposed his budget on October the 27th. And then subsequent to that, if we get into it, there could be the potential mayoral veto process and the potential council override of mayoral vetoes as well. Okay. We have a few resources online that you might find helpful. So we are running a survey on our Get Involved page that allows you to express your preferences on the various business cases that I talked about today. So either in favor of those business cases or opposed to those business cases. That survey is on our Get Involved page. And the results of that survey will be summarized anonymously, of course, and provided to council prior to deliberations to help inform their decision-making. We also have a handy online property tax breakdown calculator tool as well. That can be found on our website. It allows you to see where your property tax dollars are allocated. We have a series of what we call finance flicks. They're very short videos, kind of 2 to 3 minutes in length. Basically, it explains how the municipal budget works and allows you to kind of learn a little bit more about municipal finances if you're so inclined. Okay, finally, the last slide, the most important slide, how you can get involved and provide your input in the process. So I think first and foremost, I would recommend that if you haven't had the opportunity to do so already, the first step would be to review the budget information. Again, that's available on our website or our Get Involved page as well. And once you've reviewed the budget and have established kind of your perspectives and opinions on the budget, the next step is really to connect with the decision makers. And unfortunately, I am not one of the decision makers. Jason and Rick joining us today are unfortunately, we are not the decision makers. It is ultimately the mayor and council who are the decision makers on the budget. And so we would encourage you to submit your feedback directly to your counselor. Your counselor is ultimately your elected representative, and they are the ultimate decision makers, as I said. So they are eager, I think, to hear your input and feedback on the budget. If you don't know who your counselor is, that information can be found on our website. I've included the link here, so you can go and look up who your counselor is and their contact information. You can also, as I alluded to earlier, you can also attend the public participation meeting on November the 18th. That is your opportunity to actually address council as a whole. So all councilors will be sitting as the budget committee. That's your opportunity to come out and provide your feedback and input on the budget. Each individual who attends is entitled to up to 5 minutes to address committee, and information on how to do so is available on the website. I'll note as well that if you're not able to attend in person, you have the option to submit written feedback for the public participation meeting as well. So that's all the slides I have. I'll leave our contact information up on this slide, and I'll maybe turn it back over to Jason at this point to see if there have been any questions that have come in that we can answer for folks here today.
Perfect. Thanks, Kyle. So a lot of information to digest. We have had a handful of questions come in, so I'll try to keep them in a decent order here. The first one is, when will property values be updated on tax assessments?
So that's a great question, Jason, one that we get quite frequently. Tax assessments or property value assessments are the responsibility of MPAC, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. That is a provincial body. It is not, it's not a responsibility of the city. And currently, assessed values are based on the fully phased in 2016 value. Now, historically, property reassessments have occurred every 4 or 5 years. The last reassessment was scheduled to occur in 2020. However, of course, that was right when the COVID-19 pandemic hit us. And at that point, the province pressed pause essentially on the reassessment process. And they have not yet reinitiated that reassessment process. So we're now 5 years later, and we still have no details, no information, no specifics on when the next reassessment will occur. So for the time being, the fully phased in 2016 assessment continues to apply for the purposes of municipal taxation.
Perfect. Okay, the second question that we have, does the strong mayor process mean the mayor sets the budget?
Well, certainly what I would say is the mayor has a greater role under the strong mayor process. But the legislation simply provides a process, and it provides, as I kind of walked through, it provides very specific timelines in terms of how the process has to play out. But the legislation is very clear that, you know, a budget proposed on or before February 1st is the mayor's budget. Otherwise, responsibility for that reverts to council. Now, even if the mayor proposes a budget, as Mayor Morgan has done prior to February 1st, as I talked about, there's still the ability for council to make amendments to the budget with majority support. And then, you know, beyond that, you know, of course, the mayor can, as I talked about, potentially veto council amendments, but then ultimately, council then has the ability to even override mayoral vetoes as well. So all of that to say that the mayor plays a more active role, shall we say, in leading the process, but ultimately it is not just the mayor setting the budget.
Okay, excellent. Third question here. When will I know my tax bill?
Well, that as I kind of alluded to, earlier in the presentation, there's a number of processes that feed into ultimately setting, what the final tax bill ends up being. I alluded to the tax policy process that occurs after the budget process. So, obviously we got to work through the budget process that will occur over the course of the balance of November, and then we'll be through the budget process. However, then there's the subsequent tax policy discussions that need to occur once we get to the spring period. So typically, you'll see that kind of as a springtime conversation, which will then ultimately inform what those final tax bills end up being. So you'll get interim billings as you have in previous years. And then ultimately towards the end of the spring, once all the budget and tax policy decisions are made, final tax bills will then be issued prior to the June tax installment.
Perfect. Actually, this one in keeping with the spring theme. So the question another question that's come in here is assessment growth part of this budget process? Is there a list of what is coming out of the assessment growth budget?
Yeah, so assessment growth, maybe just a little bit of context for listeners on assessment growth. So assessment growth basically refers to the additional tax revenues that come from the construction of new homes and new businesses. So, new subdivisions are created, new businesses are created. Those obviously, those homes and businesses end up paying property taxes. And so those additional revenues, those additional tax revenues are referred to as assessment growth. Here at the city, we have a separate process whereby we effectively carve out those revenues and we use them specifically to ensure that we can continue to provide services and extend services, existing services, to those new homes and businesses. So we've carved that piece out separately from the budget. That assessment growth process occurs typically in February or March of each year. And ultimately what we do is those service areas that are interested in accessing some of that new tax levy revenue through assessment growth, they are required to submit business cases for the funding that they are requesting. Those business cases then go forward as part of a report, as I said, in February or March, that outlines how those new assessment growth revenues are being allocated or divvied out amongst those service areas that are experiencing growth pressures. So again, that's a process that will occur. I believe it's late February when you will see the report with the details of how assessment growth will be allocated.
Excellent. Okay, so appreciating that today's presentation was a lot of information. One attendee has asked, who do I contact if I have a question on the budget materials once I read them?
Yeah, so I think a bit of distinction perhaps on that. I think if you have a question about the budget, I would say the budget office is probably the best place to contact. Our contact information is still up on screen here. If you have feedback about the budget or opinions on the budget, again, as I mentioned earlier, that feedback is best directed to your counselor as the ultimate decision makers on the budget. If you have a question around, for example, a service that the city provides, then our Service London function is your best avenue. So we have the service portal that's online on the city's main webpage, london.ca. You could also call the city's main line, 519-661-2489. I believe we have an email address as well. I think it's askcity@london.ca. You can direct your kind of general inquiries there. You can also dial 311 as well if you're calling from within the city. That allows you to access kind of our main Service London line. So again, if it's more a question around the services, the various programs or services that the city delivers, and not so much a budget question, Service London would be your best bet. But if it's a budget related question, budget@london.ca is a good way to get in touch.
Perfect. So it looks like we've exhausted all the questions. So I guess that would bring us to the conclusion of today's session. So again, our office's contact information is on the screen. If anything comes to mind after, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to answer questions. So thank you for your time today, and we wish you a pleasant rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.